When I was invited to give this talk, summary of picky eating research that Sharon and I have collaborated, I looked back at when it started and who did the work. And we had and have co-advised 4 students starting in 2008. So it was a tall order to summarize 7 years of work into 20-minute presentations. So I'm going to attempt to do that. So in order to maximize the time and the information that I give to you, I am going to focus on the research that Virginia did. Virginia, would you stand up? She's here with us. She's one of our doctoral advisees currently at Urbana-Champaign, because that was the research that was funded by Food and Family Grant. It started with Mandy, 2008. She was a food science master's student who insisted that I advise her when I stated that I'm not going to accept any advisees that year, and then also pulled Dr. Donovan, Sharon along. And she was the one who actually thought of picky eating research. She had done internship at Gerber. When we started, we thought, okay, well, picky eating, that's very interesting research. What is it? How do we define it? And we came to a point, there's no scientific operational definition of picky eating. So that was our starting point. And then while we were doing the research, we found that parents had a lot of influence on how the kids were behaving as picky eaters, or even perceiving their child as picky eater based on their parenting style. So that was Amy's research. And then Virginia expanded Amy's research because with Amy's research, we found that different people had different perception of the same child's pickiness. And so in different environments, how do they act differently? Maybe the child is acting differently. So that was Virginia's research that we will discuss more in depth. And then Natasha came along and said, I would like to study some genetic components and interrelate that to environmental effects. So we are now looking into genetic susceptibility and how that interacts with parenting quality and environment for the child to be either deemed as picky or not. So here we go. So in an ideal world, we would see all children loving their carrots and broccoli, thumbs up. But in reality, many of the children really do not care for vegetables, as Sharon mentioned, with the Feeding Infants and Toddlers study in 2002. And Caruth and other researchers actually published this research. Parents beginning at 4 to 6 months report that their infant is a picky eater. And at this point, they're either breastfed or formula fed. So they're deemed a picky eater when their diet is very monotonous. And then when the toddler becomes about 2 years of age, after going through the transitional food period, 50% of the parents deem their children as picky eaters. So as we were setting our foot into the picky eating world research, we said, as all scientists would say, okay, what is a picky eater? What is picky eating behavior? Let's identify those and then study it. We found out that it's not easy to identify that because there was no scientific definition. So that was our first goal, really, to have an operational scientific definition of picky eating. And in order to do that, we assess parental perception of picky eating and actual childhood mealtime behaviors and related. We used focus groups, the qualitative measurement, and also conjoint analysis, which is quantitative assessment, and put them together. And what we found was that picky eating is not easy to define. And this is probably why we don't have a scientific definition. And there are many ways that picky eaters are characterized by their caregivers. So then we said, okay, well, maybe not a one universal definition, but let's have some buckets, characteristics of picky eaters. So from this phase one, and I'm saying phase one, Mandy study, we were able to find 4 different general patterns of picky eaters, and they were behavioral responders, sensory-dependent responders, general perfectionists, and we had these names according to their characteristics. And then the last one, preferential eaters, where we see a lot of picky eaters fall into, and more like food neophobia. And then we were able to find some identifiable characteristics of different buckets, the 4 different buckets. And perhaps in the future, we have not been able to, with that line of research, but provide some strategies for each of the buckets that may be much more conducive to their characteristics of picky eating behavior. So we were able to get 2 papers published from this research, one in Journal of Sensory Studies, defining perceptions of picky eating, and then one in Journal of Food Science, where we investigated picky eating behaviors at home during the mealtime.